The old dog lay curled on her favorite patch of carpet by the fireplace, her once glossy coat now faded with age and speckled with gray. Sophie, a golden retriever who had shared the last 15 years with the Wilson family, was a shadow of the lively, spirited puppy she had once been. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, stared blankly at the flickering flames, and her once powerful legs trembled even under the weight of her slight frame. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. She had stopped eating 3 days ago, a fact that filled her owners with a mixture of dread and sorrow. They had seen the signs. The vet had warned them it was coming. Sophie was dying, and she seemed to know it as well as they did. Her body was shutting down, and no amount of coaxing or pleading with bowls of her favorite chicken and rice would change her mind. Anna Wilson sat beside Sophie on the floor, her hands trembling as she stroked the dog's thinning fur. Tears streaked her face as she whispered soothing words Sophie likely couldn't fully hear anymore. Anna had been just 10 years old when they brought Sophie home, a wriggling golden bundle of joy. Now, at 25, she couldn't imagine a life without her steadfast companion. The house felt heavy with grief. The Wilson family moved around quietly, as if the silence might somehow make Sophie's passage easier. John Wilson, Anna's father, had built the fireplace years ago, and it had always been Sophie's favorite spot. He now sat nearby, his usually sturdy demeanor fractured by the impending loss. Even the younger siblings, Sarah and Ben, had ceased their usual bickering, too heartbroken to do more than offer Sophie gentle pats as they passed. It was late in the evening when Anna decided she needed fresh air. Her emotions threatened to overwhelm her, and the oppressive stillness of the house felt unbearable. Wrapping a scarf around her neck, she stepped outside into the crisp night. The stars were bright and indifferent, twinkling in a sky that offered no solace. Anna leaned against the porch railing, staring out into the quiet neighborhood, her mind swirling with memories of Sophie's younger days. The joyful leaps, the wagging tail, the way she would tilt her head whenever someone said the word walk. Inside, Sophie remained motionless, her breaths shallow and labored. The fire crackled softly and the house settled into a mournful quiet. Then a sound broke through the stillness, a voice that seemed to carry both across time and through walls. It was faint at first, but Sophie's ears twitched, the first movement she had made all day. Her head lifted slightly, though it trembled with the effort. "Hey there, girl," came the familiar voice, soft but clear. "You're still my good girl, aren't you?" Sophie's ears perked up and her tail gave a weak thump against the floor. The voice belonged to David Wilson, Anna's older brother. He had been Sophie's favorite human since the day she came home. David had an easy way about him that dogs seemed to understand innately. He had been Sophie's playmate, her walking companion, and her partner in countless adventures. But David had left for college several years ago and now lived halfway across the country. The family had called him when they realized Sophie's time was near, and he had flown in that evening. He hadn't wanted Sophie's last moments to pass without saying goodbye. Now, as he crouched in the doorway, his voice filled the room like a warm embrace. Sophie's head turned slowly toward him, her dim eyes struggling to focus. But she knew that voice. She knew it as surely as she had known his scent and his laugh all those years ago. David crossed the room quickly and knelt beside her, his hand reaching out to stroke her fur. "Hey girl," he murmured again, his voice breaking slightly. "It's me. I'm here." To everyone's astonishment, Sophie began to stir. It was slow at first, a small shift of her legs, a tentative wag of her tail, but it was movement nonetheless. David continued to talk to her, his words a steady stream of love and reassurance. He pulled out a piece of chicken from his pocket, something he had instinctively brought along. "Come on, Soph," he coaxed gently, holding the morsel just a few inches from her nose. "You've got to try this, for me." To everyone's surprise, Sophie lifted her head and sniffed. Her nose twitched, and she hesitated, as if weighing her exhaustion against the familiarity of the voice and the scent of her favorite treat. Slowly, painstakingly, she opened her mouth and accepted the food. The room seemed to exhale as one, the Wilson family watching with a mixture of disbelief and hope. David stayed by Sophie's side all night, his hand never leaving her fur. He told her stories of their adventures, of the times they'd chased balls in the park and raced through fields. He reminded her of the snow-covered mornings when she'd bury her nose in the drifts, and the summer days when they'd splash in the lake. His voice was steady and soothing, a balm against the inevitability of the moment. As the hours passed, Sophie ate small bites of food, her strength seeming to return, though everyone knew it was fleeting. It wasn't a miraculous recovery. It was the power of love and familiarity pulling her back, even for just a little while. She rested her head on David's lap, her eyes half closed but content, her body finally at ease. The next morning, Sophie was still alive. She was weak, but there was a spark in her that hadn't been there the day before. The Wilson family took turns sitting with her, petting her, and telling her how much she was loved. David remained her constant companion, refusing to leave her side. For 3 more days, Sophie lingered. She ate small meals, wagged her tail, and even managed to sit up on occasion. It was as if hearing David's voice had given her one last burst of energy, a final gift to the family that had cherished her so deeply. She seemed determined to soak in every last moment with them, her frail body still holding on to the life it had known for 15 wonderful years. On the 4th night, Sophie passed away peacefully in her sleep, her head resting on David's lap. The family was heartbroken, but they found solace in the knowledge that she had been surrounded by love until the very end. She had heard the voice of her favorite human, felt the warmth of the people who adored her, and left the world with a wagging tail and a full heart. In the days that followed, the Wilsons shared stories of Sophie, their grief tempered by the joy of remembering her life. They planted a tree in the backyard in her honor, a living tribute to the dog who had brought them so much happiness. And David, who had been Sophie's greatest love, carried her memory with him always, a reminder of the bond they had shared, a bond that even the shadow of death could not diminish. The days following Sophie's passing were marked by a profound quiet. But it wasn't the oppressive silence of grief anymore. It was a reflective calm, as if the house itself was taking a deep breath. The Wilson family began to adjust to life without their loyal companion, though her absence was felt everywhere. Her favorite spots around the house, the patch of carpet by the fireplace, the sunny nook in the living room, now seemed oddly vacant, as if they were still waiting for her to return. Anna, who had struggled deeply in the days leading up to Sophie's death, found solace in revisiting old photographs. She pulled out a box filled with snapshots of Sophie's life, her first day home, her muddy escapades in the garden, her endless tolerance for costumes during Halloween. Each picture told a story, and as Anna flipped through them, the weight of her sadness began to lift. Sophie's life hadn't been defined by the brief moments of illness and decline. It had been a tapestry of joy, adventure, and unconditional love. One particular photo made Anna pause. It was a picture of Sophie and David from years ago, taken during one of their many park outings. Sophie's face was a portrait of pure happiness, her tongue lolling and her tail a blur of motion. David was laughing, his arm slung casually around her neck. They looked inseparable, partners in mischief and play. Anna decided to frame the photo and place it on the mantel, a reminder of the bond that had brought Sophie back to life, however briefly in her final days. David, too, found himself reflecting on Sophie in a way he hadn't anticipated. Being with her during her last moments had stirred something deep within him, a recognition of the simple but profound impact she had had on his life. He remembered how Sophie had always been there, a steady presence through every stage of his journey. When he had struggled with homesickness during his first year of college, it was Sophie's wagging tail and excited barks on video calls that had made him feel connected to home. When he had returned after a tough breakup, it was Sophie who had greeted him at the door, her joy untouched by his sadness. Feeling inspired, David decided to honor Sophie's legacy in a way that extended beyond their family. He began volunteering at a local animal shelter, walking dogs who, like Sophie, longed for companionship and love. Each time he reached out to a trembling, nervous animal, he thought of Sophie's unwavering trust and loyalty. It felt like a way to keep her spirit alive, channeling the love she had given him into new beginnings for other dogs. For Sarah and Ben, Sophie's absence was a lesson in cherishing the present. The younger siblings, who had spent much of their time caught up in the whirlwind of childhood squabbles and distractions, began to pay closer attention to the moments that mattered. They often talked about Sophie in the evenings, sharing their favorite memories of her goofy antics. It brought them closer, a bond forged in the shared understanding of what they had lost and how much they had gained from having Sophie in their lives. One day, a package arrived at the Wilson home, It was from David, who had returned to his own apartment after Sophie's passing. Inside was a small hand-carved wooden plaque engraved with the words, "Sophie, forever our good girl." The family hung it near the tree they had planted in her honor, a permanent reminder of the love and light Sophie had brought into their lives. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on a 15-year-old dog refusing to eat? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.